Hey everyone, this is a clip from a recent episode of the Men of Steel podcast where we talk about Superman and Superman adjacent topics. If you enjoy this clip, check out the podcast. You can find it at certainpov.com or wherever you get your shows. So we're still talking about All-Star Superman. Specifically, we wanted to talk about the animated movie, but also this is our chance to talk with the two of you about the story in general and all of that. So my question to the table is, what was your experience of All-Star Superman as a story? Did you read the comic first? Did you read it as it was coming out? Did you see the movie first? I know J Mike's answer, so this is for JD and for Duke.
You made me know my answer. What do you mean?
Well, by I know your answer, I mean you told it on the last episode. So
I mean, I could have said more stuff. But I get your point.
Hey,
can't
just
rewrite history between episodes.
J-Mike, just because Alan isn't here doesn't mean we can't shame you.
I know.
It's not shame. You just watch the movie first.
No, it's called a shame case.
There's no
Learn
shame. All right, Duke.
Learn it and let it consume you.
Duke, what was your experience with All-Star Superman? Did you read it first? Did you watch the movie first? How did you come to this property?
I definitely read it first. When did I read it? It was 2008, because by that point there was a comic book store open near my college, so I was allowed to throw as much money as I can to collecting as many trades as possible. And so I got All-Star Superman on a whim because I kept hearing great things about it at that point. Like, okay, this is the most regarded Superman story of all time. It's the most beloved Superman story of all time. I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll get behind this. And I start reading it, and I'm like, wait a minute, where are the Kents? And so it took a while for me to acclimate to the fact that this is the earlier Superman, the kind of Bronze Age, Silver Age kind of guy, before the post-crisis kind of hit and, retroactively changed it all. But yeah, I definitely read the book first and fell in love with it more on every successive reread, because there's so much you can pull from it.
Yeah, totally. I feel like you're kind of in the same bracket for me, where approaching Superman as a comic property, coming in post-crisis and really sort of experiencing all of that, and having that very particular reality that we were in, as opposed to the much more choose your own adventure style of Silver Age Superman.
Yeah.
So when did you actually end up watching the movie?
Definitely when the movie came out, because there was so much behind it, especially with Dwayne McDuffie's passing and it's being one of his last credited works. And I was just kind of really excited to see it, because it's one of the most interesting dissections of Superman, and I wanted to see how that kind of translates to animated form. And for the most part, I think it did a pretty good job, even if I have a lot of gripes about it, which we'll probably get into later. But
yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, the problem of this movie is that it is a 76-minute adaptation of a 12-issue comic. It's hard to cram that much in. JD, how about you? What was your experience coming into the story, and then what was your experience? Go on.
I actually did have to look this up to see when I acquired my copy of the comic, because I read the comic first, although I knew of the movie before that, because I feel like a lot of people of my generation, I grew up watching the direct to DVD DC animated movies, starting with Superman Doomsday. So I was paying attention to the movies that were coming out in that pipeline, and this was one of them. So I knew of the story, but the first time I actually experienced it and experienced it for what it was reading the comic back in August of 2019, when I acquired my copy of the trade. And I actually didn't watch the movie until, I believe it was early 2021. Just kind of I was saying kind of like a fuck it, just say, yeah, let's watch it. And it was because reading the comic, this was around the time I was getting more and more into Grant Morrison's work, and reading that solidified my love. I think around this time I had just finished reading Doom Patrol, and there were a couple others in there that I had been reading, but this comic was the story that really sort of okay, Morrison is onto something here as far as what my taste in comics are, what my tastes in the types of superhero stories I want to read are, and also to kind of just get into a molecular level, like the type of Superman stories I want to read. And then the movie came along in my life, and Dwayne McDuffie is the shit. There's no getting around that. I love that man to death, and yeah, I love the comic. It's maybe my favorite comic of all time, and I love the movie for what it is.
Yeah, I think that's all fair on this one. I mean, looking again, we're looking here at then what is supposed to be a slightly more mass market abridged story of this big epic Superman 12-part saga.
Well, it's the same thing that happened that McDuffie did with another Morrison story, which we talked about on this podcast with Crisis on Two Earths, adapting JLA Earth 2. It's taking this. I mean, granted, the two comics are very, very different in that Earth 2 is like, that comic is extremely dense and is really meant for is not meant for new comics readers. It is extremely daunting work to get through. Whereas this comic was actually is really meant for anybody. Anybody can pick this up and understand who Superman is. Really, within the first 3 pages. But the way McDuffie adapting Morrison is so interesting in that he was taking these Morrison stories and, like you said, streamlining them for mass market audiences, but the way he was adapting them with, when he adapting Earth 2 into Crisis on Two Earths, was just to make it make it the good and evil world, and good will triumph over evil in the end, because that's what the Justice League does. The Justice League will succeed. And then here it's, well, no, we're not going to change what Morrison was going for. We're just going to simplify. And both ways work.
I think it's 2 different problems is the situation. Because Earth 2 is very dense, as you said, but there's actually not that much story.
No,
Earth 2 is a very straightforward 3-act story.
It
right,
is.
but with lots of stuff going on in every panel.
It's built to be a comic. Because it is a commentary, as we discussed over on Comics Quest when we talked about the comic. It is commenting on the nature of storytelling with superheroes in comics, whereas also Superman is just everything that Morrison loves about Superman synthesized into 12 issues, 12 dense issues, because you did have two 2-hour episodes on that comic.
Yeah, it's Morrison. Every panel, it's a Morrison quietly joint. So everything has a lot going on.
It's so dense. It's so dense. Every frame is so dense.
Yes, exactly.
There's a reason why I haven't done a Flex Mentala episode yet.
Remember, if you like the clip, after you're done liking and subscribing, check out certainpov.com, where you can find more episodes of the show, as well as a ton of other great shows.